This is The Last Coffee House, and today we are talking about Their Eyes Were Watching God by Zora Neale Hurston. I read this part of a book club. I go to book clubs now. So I thought, why not? Kind of an interesting thing to talk about. It was written like 1930? I did no research for this, so just bear with me. But Zora Neale Hurston wrote it, I think it was around 1930. I looked it up. It was 1937. Okay, so just to make sure that we're clear on that one. So it was written by Zora Neale Hurston. It is about a young woman, Janie, and her struggles in 30s America. I think it was set around the same time. The setup is that she's got kind of an arranged marriage, and she flees that to find, really it's a romance is what it is. She flees that to find somebody else. Richard Wright actually was pretty heavily critical of Hurston and this book in particular because he thought it flippantly treated the plight of African Americans in the country. And one thing that was revolutionary about the way that Hurston wrote was that she just wanted to write a romance story, She just wanted to write a simple story, and kind of the setup is structured to make that possible. So what she does, like I said, it's her grandmother who's kind of pushing her into a kind of arranged marriage, and then she flees that and ends up at an all-black town. And so this is kind of where she is, and she's functioning here and getting along with people and trying to deal with her new husband and all that. And I'm just going to give like a general opinion, kind of a review at the front of it, because I think ever since it was on Oprah's book club, that's what'll do it for you. Ever since Oprah lauded the book, it kind of had a reemergence because it was out of print for a while, and then it had a reemergence once that happened. It has some very glaring weaknesses about it, but the good things about it are very good. The things that I like the most are the setup, number one, and the colloquial dialogue. It takes some time to get used to it, but once you do, it's refreshing. One thing, like I'm going through Tom Jones right now, and I'm so bored with the language, and it's so long, and it's about a lot of the same things because it's about marriage and dowries and all that sort of thing. So it was refreshing to kind of get this different take on it. And there are some nice literary flourishes in some of the descriptions, and those were occasionally refreshing too. Some of the bad things, though, are significant. So if you want kind of a different take and to be intrigued by a colloquial dialogue, it's kind of a mix of, if you put Huck Finn and Pride and Prejudice together, ultimately, it really is just a power fantasy, is what it is. It's just a simple fantasy. It's like, if you want the male equivalent, it's like an action movie. It's making yourself, for a guy, or traditionally anyway, it's making yourself super strong and attractive, and you suffer adversity, but look how incredibly you overcome it. In this book, everything around the main character is an ornament to make her look better. That's what it's about. And it's not that she's an untrustworthy narrator, where that's part of the story. It's that it's poor storytelling. Like, the other characters are not real characters, and she's not a real character. It's all idealized. It's an idealized world, specifically to glorify the protagonist. And that's what's really frustrating about it. So, like I said, it's not a long read. It's pretty quick. And I was never, throughout the entire thing, I was never bored. I was never like, oh my gosh, when will this thing be over? I was looking forward to what was going to happen. I was looking forward to the language. I love the dialogue. So it kept me going throughout the whole thing. So I certainly appreciate that. It's just ultimately, when it comes down to it, it really does have superficial characters, and the plotting and everything around it is specifically designed to glorify the main character, which is what something like an action movie does. That's the whole point. And it has some other curious things. So that'll be the end of my non-spoiler review. So if you want to go read it, then go read it. Like I said, it's something like 200 pages or something like that. If you want to go read it. You can come back to this. I'd appreciate it, but I'm going to go deep into it. So talking about some of the deeper themes and ideas and stuff. Like I said, the characters aren't real characters. They are ornaments. So number one, like her first husband, there's this curious thing. Obviously, this is written in the 30s, so there are different mores, but you have to pay attention to what the book condemns and what the book does not condemn. And it's kind of funny the way that works. So number one, her first husband, like she says something about, like she criticizes him in some way at some point as things are not going super well. He gets out there and plows a whole bunch. He does the cleaning and the cooking, traditional gender roles. And he says that he wants her out there doing some plowing too, so they can have, more yield or whatever. And it's critical of him in some way, like saying how, I'm going to leave you. I think she ran into who will be the next husband, like on the road or something like that. And she was debating whether to go. And so she threatens her husband that she was kind of set up with. And there's there was a part of the book where it specifically says that she hurt him, and so I thought at this point, I was like, okay, well, so this is a real character because the book is critical of her doing this. This is a bad thing that she did. She shouldn't have done this. He's actually feeling hurt. But then you go through the rest of the book and you realize that wasn't the point of that series. The point was to show that she was getting one up on him so that she can leave having vanquished the first of the male foes. Which, again, the whole thing is specifically structured to be, it's a fantasy, it's a power fantasy. So, once the first husband, she just leaves him, she runs out on him to meet with this new guy. The new guy is Jody, I believe. So Jody, just inexplicably, has a whole bunch of money, and he knows about an all-black town, and that's where they're going to go. So that's where they head off to, and she's ecstatic, and he's just, like I said, he has tons of money and decides to open a store and becomes the mayor of the town just automatically. It reminds me of when like Han Solo or somebody becomes general. I think in Empire Strikes Back they like call him General Solo or something like that. It's like, that's not how that works. Like, you don't just get to you did one thing and then suddenly you get to be in the military and have a high rank like that. It's not how it works. But it's just like you and your friends playing around with your action figures, so you can do whatever you want with them. And that's what this feels like. It's that he just gets automatically elevated, and he's the talk of the town and the center of the universe. He's not even the center of the universe. She's the center of the universe, and he's an ornament to her, so it gives her that position. Now they start going on, and he's becoming more and more successful. She works in the store but doesn't like it and gets annoyed by it. She has to cover her hair is one thing. By fiat, he says, you must cover your hair because her hair is so glorious and beautiful when it's long and braided. This is what I mean. So there's one incident where there's like a mule. The people are beating the mule or making fun of it or something like that. And so the guy who owns it's not taking care of it. And then she expresses to her husband that it bothers her. Why are they doing this to this mule? And so he buys it for her so it'll be okay. And then when it dies, they have like a funeral for it and all sorts of other stuff. Now, the point of this kind of plotting and the point of the actions of the characters around this, it doesn't have anything to do with the internal motivations of any of those characters. All of it was for the purposes of glorifying the protagonist. And that's what I mean. It's incredibly superficial. So as you're going along, then Jody beats her in front of everybody in the store at one point when she like stands up to him because, oh yeah, he was calling her old. And she's like, you're old too. And it was like the first time that she stood up to him. So he beats her in the store. So what promptly happens, I mean, the book condemns this, says, this is a horrible thing for him to have done and all that. Not only this, but all of the characters in the town, like everybody, they're constantly interested in what's going on with her and her husband. And whether it's positive or negative, like, oh my gosh, he's so lucky to have a girl with such beautiful hair and all this other stuff. But she's the center. She's the focal point by which all of these things turn. So as you go along, though, you end up with he beats her, and then promptly it turns out that he's dying. And on his death, she gets the news and gets to be the one to tell him the news that he's dying. So she, like the author, uses this plotting point and completely makes this guy's deathbed and his death and everything about it, about her. She gets to go in there and be the one to divulge that you're dying. She gets to be the one who has this attacking moment of saying, no, you did this wrong thing. He's like, come on, I'm dying here. Will you please just not? And she's like, no, well, you need to hear this because there's not much time left and you have to acknowledge that I'm super important in the center of the story. So his whole character, his whole life and death and everything else was specifically about that. Again, through all of this, I'm not bored and I'm enjoying the dialogue so much. That's what's driving me along in this storyline. But again, you run into this character, the only point of him is to glorify the protagonist. Then moving on from that, like she gets the store and she's running it, but she hates it. I think it doesn't talk anything about her elevating herself and working hard and making more of the store, or at least keeping it going, because she didn't have any business expertise or anything like that, but it doesn't talk about how she learned all this stuff and figured it all out herself and the smart things that she did to maintain the profitability of the store or keep customers there or anything like that. The only thing I remember related to the store was she was bored one day not doing anything while the store is apparently running incredibly well. She had like one person helping or something like that, but she completely uninterested in the whole thing, the author and the protagonist. And one day a guy comes in, Tea Cake, and then Tea Cake walks in and he's painted as the idealized. Like I said, he's just easygoing and funny, and he's like in his 20s and she's in her 40s. and he inexplicably is just devoted to her no matter what happens or what she does. And every time she brings up something about her age or something like that, he's just like, no, not at all, absolutely not. You're super gorgeous no matter what. So he doesn't have any money. They end up getting married. She has money from the store, and everybody in the town, of course, is talking about it. I'm not sure which happens first, but at one point, like some... It's funny because the author makes a point to call this girl chubby. It's like the only character in the story that she makes sure is referenced as the chubby girl. And the chubby girl tries to flirt with Tea Cake. And Tea Cake's like, she's worried that he's gonna want to be with her, and but then Tea Cake like rebukes the chubby girl. Effectively. It's just like, again, it's just more it's like establishing that he's desired but doesn't want anybody else. Inexplicably is just completely enamored with the protagonist. Yeah, sure. So they're going on, and at one point she takes $200. So again, this is the 30s, so it's a big deal. She takes $200 and puts it in her coat. When they go travel, so they're like going to a hotel or something. He gets a car, he borrows it from somebody. He doesn't have any money. And this, again, where you think, okay, well, they're going to try to round out some characters here, because Tea Cake actually she finds the money's gone, and then later finds out that he took it. And when he comes back, she's like, what the hell were you doing? Where'd you go, and did you take my money? And he's like, yeah, I took your money and I went to the casino. It's like, all right. So we're going to have a real flaw in this character that they're going to have to overcome, throughout the rest of the book. They're going to have to discuss this kind of thing. He's going to have to rebuild trust and all that. But no, absolutely not. So this is a real cost. This could be a real cost between these characters that they have to work on. But instead, he explains it that, it was $200. I've never seen so much money. I just held on to it to make sure it was safe. But then when I had it, I was like, oh my gosh, I have so much money. So he goes and parties and gambles. and he only has $12 left because he went and bought a bunch of stuff too and paid for drinks and all this other nonsense. So he has $12 left, but he's like, I'm going to take this $12 and go make your money back because I'm really good at gambling. And you're like, okay, well, obviously if he's really good at gambling, he'd have a whole bunch of money. So he must not be. So he's probably going to lose that too. And then they're really going to have to deal with this. But again, the book is not condemning him or saying he's such a horrible person for having done this. It glosses right over it because he's supposed to be the ideal mate. So he goes and gambles with the $12, makes $300 and something, but he gets slashed because he was so good at gambling during the thing. Again, oh my God, because you can't, what's the drama here? If he just goes and makes some money, there's nothing. So he has to get slashed or something because they're horrible gambling people. But it completely nullifies that conflict and completely nullifies the cost of that thing happening in the story. It no longer costs anything. Again, these characters are incredibly superficial. They're just idealized archetypes that are fluttering around the center, a bunch of moths fluttering around the light. That is the real focal point. It's the real center of the universe. So he completely nullifies that conflict, gives her back her money, and has a whole bunch of extra money. And again, this is where the plot doesn't make sense, because if this character was so capable that he could take $12 and make $300 out of it, then why has he never done this before? He explicitly said that he'd never seen that much money when he had the $200. So why the hell, if it was so easy, why had he not done that before? He never came across $12 before. He never came across $1 that he could turn into, $50. That doesn't make any sense. That's trying to play both sides of the net. That's terrible storytelling. They go on and I don't even know. I think she sold the store at this point and had $1,200 in her bank account. Again, inexplicably expert at managing the store and doing business deals related to selling of stores. And again, just no interest in it. There's no time taken to say how she found a buyer or she negotiated or anything like that. It's fantasy. It's like the action hero who's inexplicably incredible at fist fighting when he's never been trained on any of it. So they go along a little bit longer and they end up at a new house at some point, but there's a storm, a hurricane coming through, so they end up in the storm. I know there's some stuff in between here where Tea Cake's friends or something like that, but I can't remember the specifics of that, and it doesn't really matter. But so there's a storm, and in the storm, everybody's getting swept away. There's one guy, what's his name? It's Sofa Bed or something like that. It was something really ironic because he ends up sleeping through the storm. He just finds somewhere to sleep and survives it, which I don't know about that. But they're caught up in this, and it's flooded. So she's being swept away. There's a cow floating. There's a rabid dog on top of the cow, and she grabs onto the cow, and the dog's about to attack her, but Tea Cake jumps in and and saves her from the rabid dog but gets bitten. They make it out of there, and obviously, she still got her money. And then a couple of months later or something like that, he's getting crazy, or he's trying to drink water and it's not going well. So he keeps spitting it out, and then they call the doctor, and the doctor's like, he has rabies. Oh no, there's no cure for that. Because you have to take the vaccine early on before you're symptomatic. It's really curious. They'd never encountered this before, or this was not something they knew about. And obviously, if he had gone straight to the doctor after having been bitten by the dog, especially since she had plenty of money, even he had money at this point, then this would have never been a plot point. He would have been perfectly fine, but it didn't. So the doctor says, first, there's no way to cure him, so there's nothing we could do, but then, I'll send some medicine. Just go pick up the medicine. What? And the doctor was white, I believe. There's not much about race in this, except this through line that white people seem to support and be helpful to the main character, Janie. And she compares herself to white people a lot, where she says, I'm a little more, my characteristics are more white. And she meets one woman who is light-skinned, who says that we should have our own race, mixed, who doesn't like tea cake because he's so dark. So there's this thing going all the way through, this weird thing where she tries to align herself with white people, but otherwise they're pretty much excluded from the story, which is perfectly fine. I didn't mind that at all. There are novels that specifically want to deal with this sort of thing and novels that don't, and I completely understand, and that's why it was so kind of special at the time. And what makes this book special is that it's really just trying to tell a story. It's telling a story from my perspective. I don't need to make it all about white people. But anyway, so Tea-Cake he's got rabies, and so the doctor tells her he's going to start acting crazy, so don't sleep in the same bed with him. Not he's going to start acting crazy, so don't be around him at all, or send him to a hospital or something like that, or tie him down, nothing like that, which again would have nullified the whole rest of the storyline. So he's in bed at one point, he starts acting crazy. He gets up to go to the bathroom, and she finds a revolver under his pillow. This whole thing was so stupid. She finds a revolver. It has 3 bullets in it. Instead of taking the bullets out or taking the revolver altogether from an irrational, rabies-addled, crazy person, she just flips to the empty slots. I don't know, my gun lingo. So when he pulls the trigger, she has some time to get out of there. And she's supposed to go pick up the medicine. I don't know what the medicine is supposed to do. I don't know why she's picking it up. It doesn't make any sense. But she's supposed to go pick up the medicine. But she is talking to him, and he's finally going crazy. Goes and grabs the revolver out of the pillow. And he's like, I'm going to kill you. Starts pulling the trigger. And then she whips out, it's Red Dead Redemption, just whips out a rifle and shoots him. Now, so many things wrong with all of this. There's so many things. Obviously, this whole thing it's just a dramatic moment to again free up the protagonist. And it's a manufactured dramatic moment for the sake of having a manufactured dramatic moment. Obviously, he could have been cured right away. The doctor could have said, hey, don't spend any time with him. Don't be around him at all, because that's ridiculous. She could have just taken the gun instead of leaving a loaded gun with a rabies-addled crazy person. And she could have just left. Once she saw the gun, if she wanted to leave it there, she could have just left and talked to a doctor or called the police or something like that. But she did not, so she shot him and killed him. And then the rest of the novel is her on trial for his murder. Again, just curious plotting. The beginning of this, loved it. As it went on, what the hell is this? So then we get to the trial, and even there are weird things about this too. One of the funny things is getting ready. I don't know if this is how court worked back in 1937, but it's the judge is oh, can we just start the trial now? It's all right. We don't have to do any kind of preliminary hearings. We don't have to figure out evidentiary rules or anything like that. What's going to be admitted. No motions in limine or discovery or anything like that. We just need we just go right to the trial. I'm not a criminal attorney, so I don't know if that's how they do it over in the criminal world. But it's just bam into the trial, and then she said she testified, and all the jurors thought that she was justified in the shooting. I don't know whether any questions about taking a loaded gun away from a crazy person, whether that came up in the trial. But anyway, so they go through that. And then again, the same motif was that the white people in the crowd all supported her, but the black people were really angry that she wasn't found guilty. And then right away, that cost is nullified because all of Tea-Cake's friends were just it's all right. they're all cool again. And then she's like talking to somebody, like an old friend. She went back to the original town and she's just got a house and talking to an old friend. And it was just, the end of this is trash. It's just utter trash. It's just pure fantasy. The protagonist is the center of the universe and that's it. So, okay. So that's the book. That's Their Eyes Were Watching God. Like I said, it's pretty short, and the colloquial dialogue and the storytelling, like the plotting moves along. It's terrible when it comes to the structure and the details and all that, but it moves right along. It's got lovely dialogue to read. It's just really fun. So that's Their Eyes Were Watching God. Thanks for listening. This has been the last of the coffee houses. Okay, thanks. Bye.